Okay, class, this is the true start of Unit 2 because yesterday we just introduced the terms. So you should have all these terms written down. That's going to be a great reference for you when we go back to study for this test. But today we're taking real notes, more notes probably in the next 2 days than we took for the entire other mini unit. So this whole unit is on fundamental U.S. documents, but the majority of it's going to be about the Constitution. But before we get to that, we have some others to get to first. So we're going in chronological order. So the very first one we're going to discuss is the Declaration of Independence. Now, the great thing about how we're taking these notes is that if I get going too fast, obviously you can just pause me. So make sure you get these written down in your notes. I could see it going either way. I could see where we're still online, and then if so, boy, you'd love to have some notes to be able to look over during the test real quick. And if we happen to be in person, then you better have some notes to study because you're going to take the test the traditional way. So we've got to be ready for whatever changes are coming about. All right, so the Declaration of Independence. This is our official document that declared our independence from Great Britain. People get confused all the time. Is this before or after the Constitution? This is 100% before the Constitution. We declare our independence. It doesn't mean we get it. We end up having to fight for it. So first it's the Declaration of Independence. Then it's the American Revolution, the war for independence. Then it's the Constitution because we win. Think about it like this. If right now you told your parents, I declare my independence. Cool. That's nice that you said that. Good luck with that. And then the war is going to start. And by the way, you're going to lose. So just because you declare something doesn't make it true. Now, we made this declaration July 4th, 1776, and Great Britain said, no, we're going to start killing you. As a matter of fact, just for declaring it, they said that anybody who committed treason, which this was essentially by signing this, which is why we make such a big deal about John Hancock making a big signature on it, you would be drawn and quartered. So this is real clear. To be drawn and quartered, this is what this meant. It meant that you were put on a table. You were stretched out a little bit. Your arms and legs were, just think, your arms over your head, your legs stretched out in front of you real tight. So you're kind of in all four directions. And then once you can't really move, they're going to take a knife and draw you, which means they're going to stab you in the stomach, but not real deep, just enough to make essentially an incision, except, no anesthesia. And they're going to cut you open along your chest and then take out your internals. You're going to take out your guts. Sometimes they'd even light your guts on fire. And you wouldn't die right away. They were very skilled. As you passed out from the pain, they would use smelling salts and smack you in the face. I mean, you're going to die, but you wouldn't die right away. Then, while you were suffering this horrible, horrible way to go, they then took your body down and tied each limb to a separate horse going in 4 different directions. So they have 4 horses going 4 different ways, and they tell them to giddy up. That's the quartering part. And then after they found the part that had your head, they chop your head off, but you don't care then. So this is a big deal. We are committing treason in the eyes of the British. We are declaring our independence from Great Britain. Doesn't mean that they're going to let us have it. As a matter of fact, they don't. Now, this was written by a committee, but we're going to give the majority of the credit to Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson went on to be a president. We don't really get into it in here. I do talk about it quite a bit in AP. He's got some things you just would love about him and some things that are incredibly problematic about Thomas Jefferson. But he was a brilliant writer, and perhaps as far as IQ, which isn't perfect, maybe one of the smartest founding fathers as far as, again, IQ. Greatly influenced by other English documents. So he absolutely was most influenced by Enlightenment ideas. The ideas that you had a right to have a government that responded to you, to have consent of the government, that you had a right to revolt. Also, though, inspired by a much older document, the Magna Carta, the idea that you should represent, if you're going to have a body that's going to tax you, you should be able to have representation in that body. And then, of course, the English Bill of Rights. Just certain ideas that we were supposed to be treated as equals to the English. And at this point in history, we felt like American colonists, who were mostly English, were not treated as at the same level. And we were supposed to. It was part of various charters when we first colonized the quote-unquote New World, that we would be treated as equals. But I think some of the biggest things were that the experiences we had in the French and Indian War. So I won't spend too much time on this, but from 1754 to 1763, we, meaning American colonists and the English, fought against French and Native Americans. That's why we call it the French and Indian War. And we won. And so you'd think that would be a good thing. But it wasn't really a good thing for relations between the Americans and the British. Again, at that time, Americans are British. That's what we are British colonies. But what we ended up seeing in that war were these tensions that were developing because the English who came over here to fight the war in the regular army, they looked at American colonists and said, "Oh, you guys, you're lesser than us." And I'll give you a few examples. George Washington was a lieutenant colonel at the start of the French and Indian War for the colonies. But when the British came over and took over, they automatically demoted him to captain because no American colonist could rise above that rank because you're just colonists. You even might remember a really, really silly song you might have sang as a little kid that derives from the idea of us being less, and that is Yankee Doodle. Yankee Doodle was a term that the British used to make fun of us. And if you just think about the words of that song, it is so funny to think about how they are just trashing us and how eventually we turn that on them. But, maybe you know the song Yankee Doodle. I'm not going to sing it. I'll just say the words. Trust me, this is for the best for you. But Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat, called it macaroni. You've heard at least that line, I hope. Think about what that line is saying. Think about what the British are saying when they say that. Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony. Now, I want to be real clear. In this era, men rode horses, steeds, real elegant animals. But what's Yankee Doodle ride? A pony. Who rides ponies, everybody? Little kids. So they're just dogging us right out of the gate. Oh, look at Yankee Doodle, came to town riding on a pony. Now, the stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni is such a weird line. If you do a little research, you'll find out that macaroni was an English slang word for fashion. So what they're saying is we're so backwards that, we just stick a turkey feather in our hat and we go, oh, fashion. So they're making fun of us. Yankee Doodle came to town riding on a pony. Oh, he's not a real man. Stuck a feather in his hat, and now he thinks he has high fashion. So there's this tension. They look down on us. And Thomas Jefferson famously writes, if not entirely hypocritical to his own life, that people deserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, here's where being on a committee helps. We have copies of the rough drafts of the Declaration of Independence. Now, this is a side note that's amazing. One of these copies was found in the back of a painting that somebody bought at a garage sale. And they bought it, I want to say it was like for $4. Like the people that bought it for the frame. And it was just whatever, some picture they deemed to be ugly. But when they took the picture out to get to the frame, to put a different picture in, they found a second draft of the Declaration of Independence, which they then proceeded to sell for $2 million. I think it was $2 million. It was a large sum of money. And the people that sold them the painting sued. And basically what the court said was, hey, if you are not wise enough to know what you're selling, that's on you. And so they sided with the people that got the greatest bargain ever. But we know that Ben Franklin crossed out things and wrote suggestions in the margin. And I believe originally it was life, liberty, and property. And Ben Franklin said, property is going to be very attainable by most people, but I don't know if we want to guarantee it. Okay, life, liberty, and happiness. And then on that draft, Ben Franklin wrote, well, not everybody's going to be happy. And then there were some discussions about that. And maybe you can think of people who are kind of wired this way. I know people who are so happy and they don't have much, but it doesn't matter. They're just happy people. And then I know other people who have a lot of things but they're not happy at all. As a matter of fact, there's some people who, like, they could win the lottery, and they'd be like, yeah, but it was only 4 million. So Ben Franklin's basically saying, everybody has the right to pursue what makes them happy, but, don't guarantee anybody happiness. So people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this document then explained why we were declaring our independence. It just sort of goes through and says, here are our reasons, and there are several. And as a matter of fact, if we go to this graphic organizer, you might remember this from, I don't know if this would be junior high, but military courts were taken over civilian courts. And in military courts, there's a huge thing going on. In a military court, you are presumed guilty until proven innocent. Now, that is huge. Think about this. If right now I say, I accuse you, put in your name, it's whatever student I would be looking at if you were here. I accuse you of graffitiing my car last night, okay, at 3 a.m. Right now, the way the legal system is set up is you are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So I've got to prove that you did it. I've got to have maybe video or witnesses, something like that. But if you're in a military court and you're presumed guilty until proven innocent, good luck trying to prove you didn't graffiti my car, which is amazing because hopefully, to my knowledge, you didn't graffiti my car last night. But imagine, prove it. And you go, well, I was home. Really? Does somebody know that at 3 a.m.? And you go, well, my parents, were they staring at you while you were sleeping? If so, wow, that's uncomfortable. No, in theory, you could have snuck out, gone to Norwalk and graffitied my car and come back before your parents were ever awake. You can't prove you didn't. Good luck. You have to have a witness that says, no, I saw that person at 3 a.m. So military courts are awful. Often no trial by jury, so you didn't get that, jury of your peers. Forced quartering, which means housing of troops. They said, hey, not only do we have to have a large standing army, we're going to keep the military walking around with guns all around your neighborhoods, but also you have to pay to house and feed them. Often people were being taxed without their consent. And then, of course, like we just said, French and Indian War show that people just really looked down upon them. And so these are all listed in the Declaration of Independence. And now my smartboard doesn't want to work and change pages. How rude. There we go. So these reasons are listed and explain why we are doing this. Now, your document of the week this week is the Declaration of Independence. At least portions of it. It's a little bit longer in real life. Very famous opening line, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among those life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm going to tell you right now, two ostensibly conflicting things. One, I'm going to tell you that this is a document that clearly we did not live up to. Right here, life, liberty, all people are created equal. And you could say, wow, Thomas Jefferson had slaves. George Washington had slaves. Many of these founding fathers, how could they sign this and then be a part of that? And how does slavery exist until 1865? And how do you have inequities, or for that matter, treatment of Native Americans too, and other groups? And how do we have all these inequities that we still struggle with today? I would say, one, absolutely acknowledge that. There's no getting around it. Anybody who doesn't acknowledge that is just, I don't understand. But two, here's why I still love this document. Because documents like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are better than us, are bigger than us. As mankind, we often fall woefully short of our ideals. But at least these pieces of paper hold the ideals we're shooting for. This is not always how we are, but it should be what we aspire to be. And I would argue we still have a long way to go, but we've also come a long way. But making no excuses, we still have a long way to go. But I love the idea that we are going to set this bar, that we're not clearly always going to live up to, but we're going to set this bar very high. And see, this is what we should be shooting for. This is what we should be living to. This document is the best of man's intentions, not always their actions. And then after that opening line, It just basically says, here are the specific things. Because judges just made decisions on their own, not based on the law. Because you kept standing armies in us. Because you made us pay, and house, that's what quartering means, troops. Because you taxed us without our consent. Because you didn't give us a trial by jury. And so for all these reasons, we're out. We're free and independent. And so we declare this. Now again, just because we declare it doesn't mean that it's actually happening. All right, I'm going to end up dividing this video into two. I need you to see both parts of the video today, but I'm going to break up the Northwest Ordinance. One, the videos save a little bit better when I keep them shorter, and two, some of you might want to take a quick break and then come back for the Northwest Ordinance, especially since we're going to be looking at a document for that. So this will end up part one, and we're going to pick up at part two with the Northwest Ordinance of 1787.